Did you know that there's this one Florida law that can force you out of your home against your will? Well, you can. How that's possible is if you live in a condo that is starting to be purchased by investors. And what will happen is investors can purchase a large share of units in the building and essentially pressure you and force you to sell your unit. And that's exactly what's happening to some people who have lived in some condos here in Florida for decades. There is a condo complex here in Florida called the Grand Oasis, and there's a real estate firm called West Shore who now owns more than 90% of the property's 1,000 units. The company also now has complete control over the condo board and a clear path to terminate the community's existence as they become the sole owner. Now, I have talked about this subject before in the past, and honestly, I hate saying this, but I think the best advice for most people, if this ends up happening to you, if you're in a situation where you see a developer or some kind of real estate company buy out a lot of the units where you live, you should probably consider selling to them also. And the reason why is because it's just going to be easier and better for you in the long run. Like, there is no easy path moving forward when it comes to fighting these guys when it comes to a big takeover like this. Wow, this house is a double flip. They actually bought it back in 2021 for $800,000. They tried renting it. That didn't work out. Then they ended up selling it for $1.2 million in 2023 to the current owner. And now they're trying their hand at a flip. You know, that's always the best way to sell a property, guys. Anybody who's having a hard time selling a house, just raise the price 250 grand and the buyers will start pouring in, okay? I see there's a lot of houses for sale and for rent in this neighborhood, so I'm not going to show you all of them because otherwise the entire video will be about that. But hopefully everybody knows I was being sarcastic in that last little bit. Anyways, back to the condo takeover. You know, being a holdout doesn't really serve you well or your best interest as an owner. And the reason I'm saying that is because unless you have a ton of money to drag this out in court and try to prevent the takeover, and also you're willing to risk getting less money for your unit than anybody else who decided to sell early, then there's no glory in doing this, guys. Some people might just look at it as like, well, then aren't you just giving up and all these developers are getting their way? Like, well, yeah, sort of, you are. But the thing is, if already 90% of your neighbors gave up, then you probably should too, is kind of what I'm saying here. Yeah, if a few people get bought out, you know, it ain't gonna make any difference. But when you're talking 90%, even if it's well over half, guys, if more than 50% of the people decide to sell, then that should tell you, number one, the health of your complex, your neighbors, and people's ability to even maintain this property long term is probably in danger. That's why so many of them are likely selling. And also, if that's not the reason, then probably they got a nice, pretty penny for the property. I've seen many people here in Miami that have gotten way over market value for their units that were bought out by developers and were probably extremely happy that they sold. That can actually be a great opportunity in disguise. It might not be what you were planning or hoping for in life, but by taking that early paycheck, you could actually end up pretty far ahead with that sum of money. But that's not the experience of the people in this condo. One woman who lives here and who's also a holdout says that if she sells, the money that she's going to get isn't going to be enough for her to relocate, at least not anywhere in Florida. She would have to basically move out of state. She won't be able to afford to live here anymore. And that's a product of two different things. I think number one, just a product of the fact of how much home prices have gone up here in Florida. It's gone up 60% over the past 5 years. So that's a big part of it, obviously. And the carrying costs for these houses are astronomical now. But besides that, the other thing is being a holdout probably didn't serve her well either, because when you're a holdout, you're going to get offered less than the people who decided to take those early buyouts. And it turns out that this complex, this condo takeover, has been in the works since the GFC, because back then there was a ton of units in foreclosure in this complex, and there were so many of them that the complex actually went into receivership. And then what happened is an investor started buying up a bunch of the condos in bulk, and they changed the bylaws and lowered the threshold for termination. And now, fast forward to 2019, this company West Shore, they bought the 883 units that the prior investor was holding, and it has acquired many more of them since then. So this has been a strategic takeover for a very long time. This has been in the making for well over a decade. And ever since then, guess what? The property maintenance has gone downhill. The neighbors are tired of the deteriorating quality of life there. So the remaining residents are organizing a lawsuit against this company and this takeover. And now they say at this point they feel like they have no choice left but to fight, which may be the case because you might not be getting a good offer for the property anymore. So maybe it is your only choice. Now, the state law does require a company like West Shore to offer fair market price if they're forced to sell. But that's the thing, guys. Like going back to what I was telling you earlier, anybody who was taking that early paycheck probably got far above market value. That's what makes it so enticing. It's like, wow, my place is only worth 350 grand, but they're offering me 500. You see scenarios like that a lot, and the people who take that early paycheck are the ones that get those big payouts, and the holdouts who are left are the ones who are stuck. And then you get fair market value, and as the market declines, you're in trouble. Anybody who's been watching my channel for a long time might remember this house, and this is literally one of the most extreme examples of greediness and thinking that a house is worth far more than it is here in Miami. They sold it back in 2021 for $515,000. That's when the current owner bought it. They have been trying to sell this house since February of 2022, guys. Think about that. We are going on 3 years now in February of 2025, and they listed back then for $1.35 million, have raised the price up and down since then, which is such a great strategy to sell. Even listed it for rent last year, no takers. The house has been sitting empty for almost 3 years now. And take a look at this. They even listed it for sale for $850,000 back in June of this year to just try to unload it. That didn't work. Like, when are you ever going to learn your lesson? I don't think I've even seen an example like this ever of a house taking that long to sell. When we're talking about 3 years and nothing's happening and all of this up and down nonsense with the prices, like, it is just insane. And I feel like you just don't see stuff like this anywhere else, guys. Only in Miami would you see such madness. At least I don't know that for sure, but that's what I think. Nobody likes their privacy being invaded, but did you know that your privacy could be invaded without you even being aware of it? If you've ever bought anything online or given your email address to any website, chances are a lot of your personal information is out there on the internet. Even if you never did any of this stuff, it probably is still out there on the internet thanks to companies like data brokers. And what data brokers do is they sell your information to anybody who wants it, which is why today's video is sponsored by Delete Me. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that's being sold online, and Delete Me's privacy experts remove you from hundreds of data brokers all year long. They're constantly monitoring different websites on your behalf to make sure that your information is being scraped from the internet, and you can even make custom removal requests if you find out that your information is on a website that you don't approve of. So if you want to take back your online privacy, make sure you sign up for Delete Me and get 20% off your Delete Me subscription by joining today using my link down below or use the QR code on the screen. Now back to the condo story. For a long time, condos could only be terminated if 100% of owners were on board. And they're trying to actually bring the law back to that again, to where everybody has to say yes or it doesn't happen. But that law was changed back in 2004. There was a big hurricane season, lots of damage. There was also distress starting to pile up in the housing market just a few years before the GFC. Basically, there was a lot of failed condo terminations back then for people that needed to get out. There was damage to property that wasn't able to get fixed. People weren't getting the insurance claims paid out, similar to today. You also had situations where people were not able to keep up with it financially anymore, which led up to the GFC. And so the Florida legislature changed the law to make it a little bit easier for these condo terminations to take place. Now, the way the law stands right now is you need to have at least an 80% majority who are willing to terminate the condo in order to make it happen. But if 5% of the owners, as little as 5%, basically push back on this and say no, then it's enough to hold up the process and make it so that the termination can't go through. And this is in order to offer protection for the minority owners that don't want to get out. But in this case, the investor has accumulated 90% of the units in this 1,000 unit complex. So they've definitely reached that 80% threshold and beyond, but they have 5% of the people left that are holding out. And these developers, they have deep pockets. They can afford to wait. They can afford to push you out. They can find ways to make it unlivable for you. They can make your life a living hell. They can completely let the place disintegrate on all the 900 units that they own. And that will end up tanking your property value. And guess what? That will be a way for them to steal it from you in the future. Since Florida law says they only have to pay you fair market value, if the property values plummet in the area and in your complex because of poor maintenance and nobody wants to move in, well, guess what? Now they can offer you even less when it's time to actually buy the unit. So that's why I think it's not a good idea to try to fight this when so many of your neighbors are willing to go for it. I know I wouldn't, guys. If I got offered over market value for my unit and they wanted to do a takeover, I would sell. I would just move on with my life and find a new place to live. You know, it's not the end of the world. Take it as a blessing. It's extra money in your pocket you didn't have before, and move on. Right now there's a pending court case out of Miami because there was another condo here that in a similar situation where the owners are suing a developer called Two Roads. They purchased the majority of units in the building. They took over the condo board, and the owners there claimed that the company unlawfully changed the rules to win a vote in favor of termination, which probably they did. So right now all this is still tied up in litigation, but when this court case is finally settled, then it could actually determine the outcome for future takeovers similar to this one. Now, this isn't going to stop developers from trying to do this and trying to take over more desirable properties in the future. And if this case does go through, then it will give these people at Grand Oasis a chance to even bring their case to the Supreme Court if necessary. But why would you try to hold on this much? I don't know, guys. I really don't understand, the idea behind it. I do get the fact that maybe they love living in Florida and they're not going to be able to afford a new place to live even with the buyout. Maybe that's the case, but I feel like it's kind of just delaying the inevitable. And if you don't sell, then you're just putting yourself in a situation where the complex is going to continue to deteriorate, and who knows what kind of problems, especially financial problems, could come up for the condo association due to this situation. So I feel like you're just taking too big of a risk trying to hang on to a place that they just want you out of. And I know Florida gets a bad rap with the condo situation here, but believe me, it is not just Florida, guys. There is actually a condo building up in Massachusetts, okay? It's a luxury condo on top of that on the Charles River. And they were evacuated in order to make structural repairs to the building. Everyone who lives there is being forced to move out, and this all stemmed from a construction project. They had to have somebody come and take a look at the roof over there, and the engineers found multiple issues, including problems with the reinforced concrete used when the building went up in the 1960s. So another very old building that probably hasn't had the level of upkeep and maintenance that it has needed, and now they're in dire straits. And even though they don't have to worry about getting beaten up by the ocean every day right there, what they do have to worry about, especially in the wintertime, is snow. Snow falls down, it accumulates, and it's very heavy. So the more weight you put on a building like this that's not in good shape, the higher chance you have of a potential issue. They say right now the building currently remains habitable and the tenants are voluntarily leaving due to structural concerns and needed repairs. And I guess a lot of people there are just frustrated and also confused. They don't know what to do when it comes to living there or not living there, selling or hanging on to it. And we're talking expensive. Units there go from $800,000 up to like $3 million. This is an expensive building. And yeah, I know the moral of this story, guys. Never buy a condo. You couldn't pay me to live in a condo for free. I've heard all the bad comments about it. I get it. But guess what? It's never going to stop people from buying condos. No matter how much you say stuff like that, people are still going to buy them. Condos are still located in some of the most desirable areas of the country. So it's important for people to know this stuff, because if you are planning on buying a condo, these are potential issues that you might face one day. I mean, I know I've certainly dealt with my fair share of surprises already that I've shared with you guys on the channel when it comes to owning my condo. And some people might think that I actually regret my purchase, which I don't. I still think it was the right move for my wife and I at the time that we made the purchase, and we're still in the black big time, and we could sell for a decent profit even today with everything that's going on. However, has it been more of a nightmare and tougher to deal with than I anticipated? Yeah, it has been. I'm not gonna lie. But I still need a place to live, guys, and for now we're still pretty happy with our decision to stay there. And when you run through different scenarios in your mind of what it would be like living in different places and what your lifestyle would be like and all the changes that would come with it, it's hard to give up. It's hard to give up the beach life, It's something my wife and I love. It's the #1 attraction of living in Miami for us. And if the tipping point comes where it's not worth it anymore, I'll be sure to keep you guys posted. You'll be seeing me move. Now, Redfin, they just reported that about 22% of renters say that they are spending 100% of all of their regular paycheck going directly towards rent, guys. Think about that. I mean, I don't know how that's even possible. How can you spend all of your money on rent? Because clearly there's no money left over for any utilities, food or car, anything else that you need. But that's what they're saying. 22% say all of their money gone towards rent, which also makes me want to just say, like, listen, there is no perfect solution when it comes to anything, okay? Whether it comes to renting, whether it comes to buying a house, buying a condo, a townhouse, whatever type of housing situation you choose, there are going to be challenges and issues that come along with it. There is no perfect answer. It's people that are like, oh, I bought my house and my life is so great. Well, one day you'll get yours too, because everyone always does. I think the only people that are getting away with a pretty good situation right now, if you can live like that, is people who live in an RV or a mobile home parked on land that they own, okay? Which is extremely cheap. It's an extremely cheap way to live. Insurance is practically non-existent except for maybe on the vehicle. Your monthly expenses are lower than pretty much anybody else's housing costs. But it takes a certain personality and a certain willingness to live a certain lifestyle to live like that. So not everybody can. Anyways, working a second job is also another obvious way that tenants are paying right now. 20% of renters saying that they have to work a second job to pay the rent, and another 20% say they have worked a job they hated to afford rent. Isn't that pretty much everybody? I can't think of one job that I ever had that I liked, guys, except for delivering pizzas. It really wasn't that bad. I did like the job, and I actually lost that job because I crashed my car and I couldn't deliver pizzas anymore. But I didn't quit voluntarily. Looking back in time, I should have bought a different car besides the Camaro, so I could have just kept delivering pizzas. But I decided to use some of that insurance money and buy a cooler, more upgraded car, because that's what you do when you're 19 years old and you don't think straight, 14% of renters say they've had to use cash gifts from family to pay rent, and renters are also reporting dipping into money that was earmarked for retirement in order to pay for housing costs. More than 13% pulled money out of retirement funds early, and 12% are contributing less to retirement savings. This is a worrying trend right here. And the problem is, guys, they market to these renters that are having a tough time paying rent. The real estate industry does a fantastic job at trying to convince these people that their life is somehow going to be better and more affordable, and their expenses will be more predictable if they become a homeowner. That might have been true like 40 years ago, but it's not true anymore, because the world has changed significantly since that used to be true, and all these expenses related to being a homeowner are completely volatile and unpredictable now. And it's also no surprise with how expensive it is to be a homeowner, because it's about 30% more expensive on average to be a homeowner versus a renter in 2024. That the amount of people who are choosing to rent versus buy right now is 3 times greater. So more and more people are running towards the you'll own nothing and be happy lifestyle. And I can't say I blame them, guys. Like, you have to go for what you can afford, and some people just don't even qualify to buy even if they wanted to, and it's not a choice. You're forced into renting. And even while this is going on, while you have 20% of people saying they're spending all their money on rent, we just had another record Cyber Monday, guys. They say US consumers spent a record-breaking $13.3 billion just on Monday alone. The expectation was $13.2 billion, so it actually came in slightly above expectations, and it's also 7.3% higher than it was a year ago. And I know a lot of people are going to look at this and say, you see, Michael, you've been wrong this whole time. The economy is still stronger than ever. You were wrong. Oh, but am I? I'm not really surprised by this, because people have more ways to borrow money more than ever, and Smart people actually take advantage of these deals. I know I did, because why would you pay full price for something when you can get it for 20 or 25% off, maybe even more, during Black Friday or Cyber Monday? If you have patience and you have a list of things you want to buy, you buy it all then. That's what I did. I do that every year now. I have a list of things that I don't need immediately and I know for sure are going to be on sale during this time of year, and I buy it. And every year I save myself hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. So this is, number one, an example of people probably making a lot of purchases they were going to purchase anyways, all at once. And also, don't forget how many of those purchases are made on credit cards, buy now, pay later, who knows what other kind of debt people are taking out for it. And then to top that all off, you have 20% of people that are paying all their money towards rent, guys. So it's not like everyone is out doing this. You have a chunk of the population who is spending the lion's share of the money, and everybody else is just contributing a small piece to that. The biggest selling category for Cyber Monday are things like toys. Toys was the clear winner, with online sales soaring 680%. The entire Cyber Week also was 8.2% higher than it was a year ago at 41.1 billion over 5 days. And don't forget, guys, people can go on the phone and make a purchase and not even have to whip out a form of payment and just click on that button that says buy now, pay later. And I guarantee you a lot of these transactions were made with that and on credit cards that are not going to be paid back on time. In fact, they even talked about this right here in this story. They say that with inflation where it is and affecting so many household budgets, the buy now, pay later option was on the rise and hit an all-time high on Cyber Monday, which drove 991.2 million in sales. And that's just the buy now, pay later. Everything else had to be purchased with a credit card or a debit card, because you need that in order to actually buy stuff online. And this is also bad news for all of the brick and mortar retailers, because they saw their foot traffic go down about 16.5% year over year over this holiday shopping season. So just make sure you don't look at these headlines like, wow, we had the biggest Cyber Monday ever, and you need to put things into perspective and see what's really going on with people being kicked out of their homes with condos, people not being able to really afford the rents. That's real life, guys. Spending this fake money on Cyber Monday and worrying about it, buying it now and paying later, is a fantasy that people talk themselves into that it's worth it somehow. So if you enjoyed this video, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.